Hello, my name is Michaela O'Connor Abrams, founder of Mocha Plus. Welcome to our Collective Conscience series. We created this series for you to bring together great minds from around the world on myriad topics that we hope will expand your mind, will challenge your current beliefs, and give you an opportunity to be inspired with every video. Enjoy. So welcome everybody on this rather toasty Labor Day weekend. For those of you in New York, it's a balmy, 77, and here it's a balmy 104. Usually it's the other way around, but here we are. It's better than the 111 it was in Mill Valley yesterday. No explaining, and let me can only say that we're having our own global warming right here in the community. And of course, we are also having fires, and I expect tonight that some frogs will be falling from the sky and locusts are arriving in the morning. But other than that, things are wonderful. And I thought we'd start with a little bit of trivia since we have such a wonderful evening, bringing back Chef Rachelle Boucher, not to be matched by anyone doing lobster rolls. Notice that I did not pronounce the ER, but the appropriate AH at the end. So, before we start with a lobster, I wanted to say, it was in 1882 in New York that we celebrated the first Labor Day as a country to celebrate the American worker. So tonight, that worker is none other than Chef Rachelle. So Rachelle, with that, thank you so very much for joining us and celebrating with us, especially since just because we're broadcasting from the West Coast, your idea of doing the lobster roll and have a Maine Labor Day, thought it was fabulous. Not to mention for our friends on the East Coast, but who doesn't love great lobster? So please tell us about what we're going to do tonight in following you to make the wonderful rolls. And I also will be asking you some questions about your cooking methods and things, because there are some very exciting things that you are doing with your company.
Exactly.
We want to talk about that. So welcome, on with the roll.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, everyone. And it's just a joy to be with everybody. It's the closest I get to lots of people these days. So it means a lot to me, the raging extrovert that I am. But it is Labor Day. And Michaela, you made a good point when we were talking the other day. Cooking is a lot about work. There's a lot of work involved. And now there are these layers. But the origin, we'll talk about that tonight. But the origin of this is that every year, I was born in Maine, and that is an incredible family legacy that we have. So French Canadian, hence the fancy pronunciation of my name. But every year we go to Maine, and of course not this year. And it's such a poignant thing to leave behind ideas, traditions, and family right now. But I cannot express how much more it all means to me. So we go to Maine, and specifically the sort of southern central coast of Maine. And anybody out there been to Maine? It's so magical. So as a child, I would spend a couple weeks in the summer there, and the smells and the sights and the sounds are incredible. And as a child, I kind of thought lobster was like a cheap available thing all the time that you could just get. You could even get lobster rolls at McDonald's back in the day in Maine. So I thought it was a pretty common thing. And then when I realized, no, it's actually quite a delicacy everywhere else. So I do celebrate it a lot. It's expensive. The prices have come down a little bit because the lobstermen are not selling as much lobster to the restaurants right now. But this is the lobster roll. This lobster roll is about a journey that we took several years ago. We were staying, and Michaela, you know this town. We were in Stonington. So you have some stories about Stonington yourself. but there's an island off the coast of Stonington, and Stonington is your typical craggy coasted fishing harbor. And I mean, the way everyone speaks and talks and the food, it's incredible there. And so if you there's a kind of a legendary little island off the coast of Stonington. It's called Isle Haut, and it's Isle, Isleau, and then Haut. And if you take a little ferry boat out to this little tiny island, there is supposedly a really famous chocolatier and a really famous lobster truck somewhere out there. So we did that years ago. We took this little tiny ferry. We're thinking, like, where are we going? And took this incredible walk down this long, beautiful little road with blueberries growing everywhere, and the smell was amazing. And lo and behold, we came upon the most remarkable lobster truck ever. It's done by literally the Maine lobster lady. Her other name is Diana. But it was amazing. So we had the most incredible experience and lobster roll out there on this island. And then if you walk a little further, there's also a really famous chocolatier called Black Dinah Chocolate. So it's literally the middle of nowhere personified. You take a boat and, you know, all these things, but meeting Diana was an amazing experience. And then Diana takes her lobster truck and she drives it in October to Arizona and stays in Arizona from October through April, driving around, being the food truck, famous food truck actually in Arizona, and then makes her way back to her island home for the summer in Maine. So that's the origin of this. I want to bring Diana to my heart. She couldn't join us tonight. It's a little late for her. She gets up early. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of backstory to the island life that we're talking about today.
Wonderful. Well, it happened that, as you were telling the story, that my husband and I vacationed in Biddeford.
Yes.
And had heard about the Isle.
Yes.
And didn't actually get there because Taylor was 1 at the time, and
wow.
I didn't know kind of what a trek it was going to be, and with a 1-year-old, so we just stayed at the beach and kept swimming that day, and had plenty of lobster the whole time we were there. But I really, it's something, this is a put on the bucket list because it's
absolutely.
Incredible.
Absolutely. And she does serve a blueberry lemonade. So what I'm going to make today is we're going to talk a little bit about lobster. They are labor intensive. There's a lot of work there. The flip side of a lobster roll is there's not much else that goes in it. So yes, you spend a little time preparing and cracking the lobster. I love doing that, but I understand if you don't. There's other ways to get around that. But then the rest of it's pretty simple and straightforward, so it's a good balance. But I want to talk a little bit about the blueberry lemonade, so we'll get that started. It can be a cocktail or it can be just a straight ahead lemonade. So we'll get that going, and we'll weave through a little bit more about taking some of the labor out of cooking, because I understand it's a lot to do. So get started on the lemonade. Cool. So what I've done ahead of time, so there's quite a few things. I sort of get some things done in advance so we can cool everything. But I've made a blueberry syrup, which is a remarkable thing to have for anything. So this can be a cocktail or it can be just a straight ahead lemonade. So what the recipe that was sent along to you is really simple. You make literally a simple syrup. A simple syrup is sugar and water boiled together, really easy. But these days, our bartenders, bless them that they get back to work soon, they're putting a lot of great things inside. So we've got sugar and water mixed together, and then I added about 2 cups of frozen blueberries. What's amazing is you can find phenomenal Maine blueberries frozen. There's a brand called Wyman's. There's even some Canadian, but I go with the Maine. They're little tiny magical blueberries. If you've ever picked them in Maine, you pick them with a rake. They're on the ground and they're teeny tiny, and you take a little rake and you scoop them up, and it's amazing. So what I've done is I made the simple syrup with the sugar and water. I put the blueberries in, and you can opt to add, if you'd like, I zested 3 lemons. Blueberry and lemon get along. They have an incredible relationship together, and they really enhance the flavor of one another. So after I cooked down the simple syrup, I then just zested 3 lemons right into it after it was cooked. And then I had to cool it off to make the cocktail. So this is a remarkable simple syrup that you can use. You can flavor iced tea, you can flavor lemonade, you can flavor sparkling water, and you can make a lemonade itself. So I'm a big soda stream person. If you guys are into sparkling water, I love this thing. So I'll just concoct a big batch of this. So it's about 1.5 cups of lemon juice. Put that in there. And then I'll take my simple syrup. You can strain this if you want, but I like the blueberries all up in there. That's something I love. So I'm gonna do it, it's about 1 cup, but I'm gonna taste it as well. And then I'm going to mix in my sparkling water or regular water. And you're really looking for a flavor balance. I'm looking for a concentrated flavor because I have ice. I'm gonna put this on ice, so I don't wanna water it down too much. So I'll give it some taste. And this is something that we have when we go visit Diana at her lobster truck without the alcohol. I'm gonna add 1 ounce per drink to make a cocktail. And I found the citrus, little tiny citrus vodka.
I wonder, Rachelle, what a Mount Gay rum would be with it.
It will go with anything. Absolutely, a nice clean flavor rum would be incredible. No question about it. I lived in Sweden, so I have a little thing for absolute my life in Sweden. So I'm going to put just about 1 ounce in here. Most chefs are bartenders too. It's part of our job, right? If somebody needs a cocktail, you better be able to produce that. And then I'm going to put some of this in here. You notice I always work on a tray or a plate. I'm in the business of preventing messes. That's a big part of cooking. Trust me. So let me do this. Then I've got a little bit more of the blueberries, kind of float them in on top. Love it. Blueberry and mint get along great. So I got my own little mint from my teeny weeny windowsill garden. And then here's my beautiful cocktail. Lovely. I'm also gonna go with no alcohol, like so.
But it's holiday, so I think we have to have the vodka, gin, or rum.
I think so. I think it's really fun. There you are. But I always give a really, just like when I'm cooking meat, I always make sure that there's a real vegetarian option, not just like pasta. So same thing with cocktails. I always make sure that I really think about people who don't drink as well, and that's awesome. I'll hand this over. So here's our little drinks. So in the spirit of Maine, in the spirit of blueberries, in the spirit of all of you and Labor Day, cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
I love it. You can add more. What's really wonderful is the syrup is sweet, so you can balance it out any way you'd like. I'll hand this non-alcoholic one to my partner in crime, Robert Roth. Cool.
And Rachelle, what was the ratio that you said for the simple syrup of sugar and water? What ratio?
It's usually 1 to 1. In this case, so it's usually 1 sugar to 1 water. So whether it's cups, whatever the case. In this case, I think it was 1.5. Let me just double check. In this case, 2 cups of water, 1.5 sugar. Because I think probably because the blueberries add some sweetness too, so got it. But a generally simple syrup is a 1 to 1 ratio. Cool. All right, so cocktail or lemonade. Any thoughts or questions on that? Anything you want to know?
Other than everybody's going to be making something right now. If they're not, it could be because of the heat that everybody is sipping on water, but it might be more interesting right after.
Absolutely. What's great, this can be in the fridge or the freezer for a very long time because it has a lot of sugar in it, which is a preservative. So the next thing we're going to talk about is prepping the lobster. And for some people, like I said, it's like a birthright for me. I grew up as a little kid just doing this and seeing it. It's an inexpensive food. So, and I have a lot of respect for that. I really understand that. So you want to really get the most out of it. And it's quite a bit to prep. It's so second nature for me, but I really understand. So in terms of your lobster, you can certainly get a frozen lobster tail. They're excellent. They freeze them out at sea, so that can be really good. I always buy live lobster. And so I will bring that out. We got these in Half Moon Bay today. Quite an amazing creature, really. So there's quite a few ways you can cook this. I use a steam oven if I have the chance. You can certainly boil a whole pot of water. In this case, off camera here, we have water boiling, so we can put that on. What I have actually figured out, I think, which is going to be more economical for people in terms of energy use, that's something I'm really focused on these days. Whether you have gas or induction, I'm just putting 2 inches of water in the bottom of a really big pot, and we're getting that going. You want to have that boiling, and this is actually going to be steaming instead of cooking in an entire pot. One thing that you can do that is recommended as a more humane way to cook the lobster is right here on the head. I don't know if you can see very well, but there's a first indentation right here at the top. What you can do is you can plunge a knife into there, and it does sever the spinal cord, and it is recommended as a more humane way to cook the lobster. You can choose to do that or not. I think it's probably a good idea. For some people, I really understand not everybody likes to throw lobster into hot steam or water, and I really get that. Michaela, you had a really great solution to that. You had sort of a good substitute. Yeah. So you can certainly buy chopped or cooked lobster. One of the things we want, and I'm going to start taking this one apart, is you want those really big chunks. So sometimes when you buy the lobster meat, it's pretty tiny, but you have a great solution.
So I happened to be at Costco getting some things, and everybody who has shopped there probably know that their butcher, and when they've got fresh fish, is really amazing. And yesterday they had langostino, and really large, beautiful, beautiful chunks. And it was like $40 for, I believe, it was a pound and a half, 2 pounds. So that I think would be great in the lobster world if you don't have a lobster. And I simply have to tell you that when my parents were sent a lobster as a gift from Maine, my mother opened the box, promptly removed the lobster, cut off the rubber bands holding its claws, filled the bathtub so that the lobster could swim around, and called a friend and said, I am not cooking this lobster. Right now, it's enjoying a bath. And we put some salt in the water just so it's comfortable, and there is no way it's going in a pot, and I'm not eating it afterwards. Even though she couldn't be part of, the sausage making, as it were. So for my mother, langostino would have been the solution.
Absolutely. And so when you have, and one of the things that you had mentioned, which is really important, is that whether it's cooking the lobster, langostino, any types of fish, shrimp, as soon as it gets overcooked, you have wasted your money and the life of the creature. So it's really important to understand, how do you cook something that you can't see into the inside? So it's really important. In the case of a whole lobster, if I have a steam oven, so those of you that might have a steam oven, I'm hopefully getting mine installed soon. It's taking a while. But you get it all hot and steamy, and then you can put the lobsters in, whether it's 1, 2, however many. I've done 8 at once in one steam oven, and it's 10 minutes that you cook it. This is 1.5 pounds. Okay, so you're gonna have to vary it. In the case of this steaming here, I did same thing, get it all hot, 10 minutes in, and then when the feeler comes off easily, that's an indication that it's ready.
Okay.
So it's amazing.
That's also,
Yes.
that's after you've stabbed it with a knife right here to knock it out.
Yes, I would do that immediately before I put it into the pot, right? Yeah. Great. So now I want to show everybody too, in terms of taking these apart, I have these kind of fun little mitts, so I use these to kind of get a hold of it. They're my hot mitts. So you want to remove, twist the tail off like that, okay? And then one of the things you can do with the langostino, and I'll talk about that as I go, what I'm gonna do, meanwhile, as I talk about that, I'm gonna flip this over, and I have these amazing crab scissors. These are in almost every Asian family that I go to, they've got these. So I'm going to cut the bottom of this, all right? And I'm gonna go all the way down. You really have to go all the way to the very end, and that's gonna open that up. In terms of cooking the langostino, they can get really tough really quickly. So one thing you can do is you can look up the butter poaching option, and it is literally the lowest, barest simmer of butter, a little bit of salt in there or salted butter, and then you can plunge the langostino in there and just barely cook them. Keep in mind, any seafood that you cook, langostino, shrimp, fish, it has a phenomenon called carryover. That means that it continues to cook after you've removed it from the heat for a while. So you've really got to factor in carryover. It's a little tricky. So in this case now, I'm removing the claws. You have a larger claw for the grabbing, and the smaller claw is kind of the grabbing and holding claw, and the larger claw is where it's killing and hanging on to everything. It's a very violent life out there. I always remove this little guy, the little kind of claw, and I try to get that piece intact. Again, always working on a tray. In terms of cooking at home, I have so much love and respect for people who not only are cooking 3 meals a day when they never had to do that before, plus snack, but are also doing school. That's amazing to me, and I respect it. I don't do that. My cat doesn't go to school, but very difficult. So then I remove now the sort of knuckle part from the claw. I've removed the head. There's some really delicious kind of innards in here called tamale. I love eating that. It's kind of like uni. Some people are like horrified by that. These little legs are delicious. As a little kid, you just chew on them and they taste amazing. There's like the tiniest bit of lobster in there, but tiny is better than none. So this is sort of a little snack to have, but yeah, so we keep that for later. Not totally relevant to what we're for the lobster roll. So we're gonna remove the claw. We're gonna open this guy up, and I've got a lot of moisture happening. So meanwhile, I'll start to crack this up. So lots of towels. And then what I like to do is I have a kitchen towel, not a fancy one, clean, but not fancy. And I'm going to put that here. And this is where I'm going to do one at a time. I'm going to hit this lobster, just crack it a little bit. Goals are just to break it, crack it, but not mash it to bits. But hey, do what you can, right? Do what you can. So I've got a meat mallet here. Decisive cracks, and we'll get that done. And then yeah, this girl's been around some lobster. And then the goal is to pull it apart as best that I can and try to keep that intact. If you don't, doesn't matter. But, and then you can feel inside of here, sometimes there is a piece of cartilage that is right up in the inside. So you can actually feel that. So I will take a scissor and just go in, do a little snip, and there's no cartilage in that piece. So I'm gonna save that intact because how fancy would I be to put that on top of my lobster roll, right? Hey, right? So I'll do that, put that one aside. Now, in many of the Maine, fancy Maine places, you get an entire pound and a half lobster on one roll. Now that's a big bun, but that's a pretty amazing thing. In this case, I think you can get 2 out of reasonable size rolls out of this pound and a half lobster.
So if you're doing tails instead of the whole lobster, don't you think probably 3 tails to 1 lobster or 2?
Yes, I think if you did 3 tails, that would be perfect. Okay. Absolutely. And remember, you can kind of dole out the lobster the way you like. So this is going to be 2 big ones plus, you know, some on the side. There's some great, you can even do little appetizers, and I'll talk about that. So same thing, I've got this claw. I'm gonna go inside, make sure there's no piece of cartilage in there. And there you are, those are beautiful. So the next thing I'll do is I'm gonna take this big tail out of here. Sometimes it comes right out and sometimes you just gotta chat it out. The next thing I'll do is there's a big debate in terms of whether all the things that you do or don't put into a lobster roll, right? You've heard that. So I prefer the tiniest bit of mayonnaise. The Maine style is a tiny bit of mayonnaise and sometimes celery. I don't think it needs celery personally. So get that guy out of there. Let me just switch back to this channel for a minute. We're going to do just a little bit of mayonnaise. We can add a hint of lemon to that if we want, and I do have chives, so we can take a vote. So here is the tail. What I'm gonna do is just like a shrimp, you wanna cut up the middle and remove any veins that go through. Even if the vein is clear, you still wanna remove that. And I go all the way down to the end. Now these pieces that come off, they're pretty tender. I'll cut those up kind of small. But I've got a beautiful whole tail. So Michaela, yes, I think depending on the size, probably 3 of those.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll show you is the knuckle meat, which is really good. So just take that out. I'll show you a little bit of that. And it's beautiful big chunks. So don't forget any of that. So in the interest of time, I'll deal with the rest of this in a little bit. We don't waste any of it, but I'll move that along because I do want to show you how to make a little mayonnaise if you want to see that, because it's pretty fun and pretty simple to do. Okay. So any questions so far?
The green, help me.
The tamale.
The tamale. So
it's Tomalley, I believe is the spelling of it.
And so it's not my favorite, and even uni, you know, at sushi, it's the consistency for me. It's not
sure.
So the consistency. So, but at one of the lobster roll places that I went to in Massachusetts, no, it was on Nantucket, they actually put that kind of on the roll, almost like the spread.
Yes.
People do that?
You know, putting the tamale on as a spread is something that's, you're really banking on that people are going to like it. Yeah. It is, to your point, I don't like uni at all, but I love tamales. It just depends on how you grew up, I think. But that is very like super fancy, bougie fun. But I would be careful about doing that for most people because they're like, it's a little much, but
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm going to show you the mayonnaise. Now, if you have a general New England or Connecticut style lobster roll, that is drizzled butter lobster. So I don't hate that. That's pretty great as well. But I want to show a little bit of a mayonnaise. So in this bowl, I have a whole egg and I have a tablespoon of Dijon. So I'm going to get this going. We have an emulsion happening. And I'm trying to get this into the view here. Here we go. Boom. Done. So we're going to mix this up. And then I'm going to add, very slowly, start to drizzle in the oil. Now in this case, I have a little bit of my favorite lemon oil. It's from Olive This, Olive That in Noe Valley. She's got a gorgeous shop where you can go and taste oils and vinegars, women-owned, local business. So I added a little bit of her Meyer lemon oil, probably a tablespoon and a half. And then I'm going with my squeeze bottle. And as I go, I'm very slowly whisking this in to create an emulsion. And those of you that make mayonnaise at home, I'm sure, Drew, this is something you're very familiar with. It's not white because it's not hydrogenated. It's going to come out like different shades of sort of yellow depending on the oil you use. I'm using a pretty neutral oil here, but you can flavor it up. And then just a little kosher salt. Cool.
Michelle, is that a nifty little kitchen gadget that we need to know about, that the bowl is resting upon which the bowl is resting?
No, that's just me working with Zoom. It was just too low.
Oh.
Yeah, Drew's like, I see you, I get it. Yep, it's just,
I want one.
we had to switch cameras because of an internet issue, so I have a lower view than we intended.
That's okay. And because we can see it, I mean, this is my favorite. Growing up, my grandfather didn't believe in anything from a can or a jar. So we had made homemade mayonnaise every day. And whether it was with the Italian tuna, you know, with a little bit of celery on a French roll or something. Yeah. And it's my favorite. I could slather it on a whole lot of things, but then who doesn't love basically salt and fat on things, whether it's mayonnaise.
I do. I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice, just a small amount, because I've already added all of that lemon oil, which is very flavorful. And then chives, I'm gonna add some chives. That's the one thing that Diana, the Maine lobster lady, would approve. I love it. So being from Maine, I also grew up just being, you know, you have to do a lot of things for yourself, fend for yourself, chop wood, go feed the animals, you know, all that stuff. So I think it lent itself to it prepared me to be a chef. Just gotta go do it.
What do you think about using, if you're doing enough, a stand mixer? Liz is on and she wanted to know, what about doing the mayonnaise in a stand mixer instead of the whisk? What do you think?
You know, that's a really good thought, Liz. You can absolutely do a stand mixer, but generally when I'm making mayonnaise, I'm not making a ton. Like this right here is probably a cup and a third yield. So by the time you put it in the stand mixer and clean it and do everything, I think it would be probably more trouble than it's worth. But when we're talking about whatever makes it easier or more fun for people to cook, do that. I understand.
And was this, you used an egg or did you use 2 eggs?
1 egg, 1 tablespoon, so it's a 1 large egg, 1 tablespoon of the Dijon mustard, and then about a cup and a third. I measure 1.25 cups oil into my squeeze bottle and slowly whisk it in to emulsify. If I dump it in too quickly, the oil and vinegar separate. They don't want to be together. As you slowly whisk it in, and you also have the Dijon mustard, which is an emulsifying agent. It helps that happen. So you get a wonderful thick result. And if it starts to look greasy and separate, slow down on the oil, whisk a little more. So you certainly could do it with machine power, but it comes together fairly quickly. But trust me, I'm not one of those chefs. I believe in taking whatever steps to make it more empowering for you. All right, so here we go. We're going to put together our lobster salad. This is missing just a little bit of the lobster because I don't want to take the whole time to break that apart, or to break the whole piece. I'm going to just split the claw in half right down the middle, and we'll put the rest of it in here. And in the recipe, I gave you about three tablespoons of the mayonnaise. I'm going to go a little bit less because I have a little bit of lobster behind that we will get to.
And also,
about 2 tablespoons.
Drew adds to this, Rochelle, that if you happen to over process it, that if you add a couple drops of cold water, it will re-emulsify.
Absolutely. Drew, you've probably done these in giant vats, right? So you can chill this if you'd like. I tend to like it room temperature, but not out for too long because it is perishable. But I've never had a situation where lobster went too badly to waste. So I think we have a little bit of time. I just want to show you a little bit about the Whoopi pies, and then we'll put these lobster rolls together because it's really a wonderful thing. Does anybody know about a Whoopi pie? I mean, you, Drew, come on. All right, I got this for you. This is fun. I can see a couple of your faces there. So it's a really fun and very simple dessert. It's something that has crazy childhood memories for me. But it can also get really gourmet and fancy. It's one of those desserts that's come back with a lot of iterations, which I kind of love when that happens. But I want to show you a really simple one that I do. So 1 second. Let me try.
Also, Rochelle, where you're getting the pies ready, Liz was asking how long the homemade mayonnaise lasts in the refrigerator.
That is an excellent question, Liz. The homemade mayonnaise is pretty incredible because, again, I would say it does have the raw egg. I would say probably a week and a half. What is interesting, being that I'm an appliance person, depending on the type of fridge you have, some refrigerators can keep food forever based on sort of how it's engineered. But I think in general, probably a week and a half. It certainly can't be frozen. While I'm talking about Whoopi pies, because it's such a good conversation, I also want to make sure to toast up the roll for the lobster roll. This is a hard part. To find the right roll is a lot harder here in the Bay Area than in Maine, but the goal is to get a split top roll, right? So what you're looking for is a roll that is split on the top so you can butter and toast it on the sides. So I'm going to show you a little way to do that. You can find them. This is a great brand. This is a brioche roll. It's Saint-Pierre. It's really nice. Now, what I did, though, was the Saint-Pierre is a brioche roll. It's available Whole Foods, a lot of places like that, even some like Andronico's. But what you do have to do is it's kind of finished all the way around. No, not good. So what I need to do is just trim the sides. So let me move this around and I'll show you what that looks like. And we're gonna just butter toast it. Cool. Thank you, Rob. You got my back. So go here, and you can use a regular hot dog roll and toast that as well. But it's pretty wonderful to see the lobster kind of spilling out over the top. So I'm just barely, and I'll show you on camera, I'm just slicing the very edge of those off like that. So you've got a nice kind of flat surface that you can butter and toast. It makes a really wonderful texture. So we'll get that going on, and I've got several of these here. When the last time we were in Maine, we went to a very famous place called Red's, where they literally put an entire lobster on a whole lobster's worth of lobster on your lobster roll. And it was really fun because America's Test Kitchen crew was there. And I think they were just having lunch. I don't think they were even filming. I think they were just hanging out. And I was like, oh, hi, Jeffrey, how you doing? So I have over here my induction burner. I am an electric kitchen aficionado, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I'm just going to, this heats up so fast. I'm just going to toast this. So we have a little bit of beautiful color on the side, a little crispy taste. And I'll put that over here. So the last thing we want to talk about, back to whoopie pies. Sorry about that. This is a whoopie pie. It's so fun. I love these. Look at that little darling. This is a very tender cake, and it has all kinds of different fillings in it. This filling is pretty old school, kind of what I'm used to. It is whipped butter and powdered sugar, marshmallow fluff. I know it's not the most sustainable thing on the earth. I mean, where does marshmallow fluff come from? However, I love it a lot. You can certainly make all kinds of really fancy versions of this, and that's incredible. What I like is that it's a very, very easy cake to make. So I've got a couple things here. That bowl that had everything in it. So it's with buttermilk. Now, if you don't have buttermilk, you don't want to buy it, you can also add a little vinegar to milk and get that same result. So I've got all these bowls here. Cool. So
Lemon juice works too, Rachelle. I did
what is it?
this morning, yep.
What does Shelley?
Lemon juice, a tablespoon of lemon
Yes.
juice.
Exactly. So you've got all these lemons, right? Exactly, lemon juice. The idea is you just want something very tangy. So I'll just show you the ingredients on this. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
My bad.
Good to see it happens to the best
Don't
of us.
ignore your roll,
man, it's my dinner.
right? All right. So just briefly, I'll just talk you through it because it's a simple, simple little cake, and there's so many fun things you can do with it. Okay, so sugar and butter, cream, very kind of traditional way to do things. What you will also then do in a separate bowl, so whenever you're making cakes, you want to mix your dry ingredients separately. And in this case, you definitely want to strain this, filter it through a little strainer. So here we go. All right, so this is flour and cocoa powder, okay? I've got kosher salt and baking soda. This I would then, after you whip, in this case, I do use a hand mixer or a stand mixer. Yes, definitely. You're gonna cream this together, and then what I will do with a little sifter is I sift this all the way through. You don't want any of the chunks in this. Now, the only tricky part of this, I think, is once you have your butter all creamed and this mixture all sifted, you're going to add the liquid and your dry ingredients in 2 separate parts, okay? And this also has, an egg. So what you're going to do is blend in your buttermilk. Get the buttermilk mixed into the creamed sugar and butter so that it lightens it up. Then you'll add half of your sifted cocoa mixture. then you're just gonna barely bring that together. The goal is not to over mix it. As soon as liquid and flour work together, they start to create gluten, which are strands that you don't, it's strands of protein that you don't want to develop in this. You do in bread, right? Then you just barely bring that together. You add the rest of your buttermilk, stir that up, and then the rest of this. And it's going to give you a very light, very fluffy, little tender cake. And then I'll just show you how to put that together. It's a lot of fun. I'm having childhood memories. So then here is, it makes this tender, really tender little cake. It's incredibly fun. So when you make this, I need to know what your versions are. There's a lot to do here. Please.
So is this a whoopie pie pan that you are putting into the, pouring the batter into a pan?
You know what's incredible? I literally scoop, so you make that batter, it becomes this very fluffy batter, and you literally just scoop the batter in mounds on a sheet pan. This is literally how I cooked them. And they spread out and stay a little bit risen in the middle, and it's awesome.
Beautiful.
These got a little big. My scoop, I have a scoop that I use. My scoop is a little big, but oh well.
Those are beautiful.
It's really fun. And you can do these are very easy to do as minis. So you can do mini versions, and you can just really play with the fillings. So it's so nice and so tender, and they're just a ton of fun. You'll see these in every little rest stop and restaurant in Maine, all wrapped up right on the counter. You can't get out of the store without getting a whoopie bar. Oh,
I think Minnie's.
look at that little baby.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Beautiful.
It's a lot of fun.
Yummy. You see, if you had them smaller, then you'd have to eat so many more of them.
Exactly. Well, what's so nice is they're so tender. So, sometimes you get an ice cream sandwich and you try to bite into it and it's a little weird. These are so very tender.
A friend.
Right. I'm going to just put together the lobster roll. We'll take this little crispy one, set it aside. Thank you.
A friend of mine cheats and takes the double Oreo stuffing out and with marshmallow fluff. And I haven't tried it personally, but she said that's the easier. I don't know why. It doesn't seem easier to me, because by the time you
right.
And you've eaten then the Oreo cookie.
Oh, the Oreo.
Right.
Exactly.
Way more than you should.
Absolutely. All right. But these days, sitting and eating a bunch of Oreos is kind of something we're getting away with more these days. I don't know.
Yes.
And then I try to put sort of some of the claw meat just really sticking up on the top. So let me just, I've got my little hand washer here, and I'll put these together. So let me know, I'm gonna put these on a beautiful plate, but let me know what thoughts and questions you have.
Rachelle, did you mention this already, what the proportions were in terms of how much? You said you used a light mayonnaise. If you just use a tablespoon or so?
In this case, so if I were to take apart that whole lobster, there's still a little bit of lobster left in there. If I were to take apart that whole lobster, it would be about 3 tablespoons of mayonnaise, but go easy because it just depends on how you like it. Everyone's different. So I would say maybe start with 2. In that case, since I didn't have all of the lobster out of there, it's about 2 tablespoons. And it's pretty beautiful. I'm gonna just top it with a little fancy, like a Maldon salt, because, why not? But it's a really beautiful thing to have. A side dish, I'm not kidding, is like, where are they?
Beautiful.
This is the side dish we always get, kettle chips, when we go to Diana. So one of these on a plate with some beautiful chips on the side, and it's sort of like high-low cuisine, which I think is a lot of fun. But I will clean this up and see what thoughts and questions or anything you'd like to talk about while I tidy up my space.
Well, as you're tidying up, one of the questions is, if you decide you were going to do lobster salad, right, on a beautiful, maybe on a bed of Bibb lettuce, and add some avocado around the edges and grapefruit wedges, all the things that people love to do to dress it up. Would you use the same proportion of the mayonnaise to the lobster?
I sure would, absolutely. And and you can taste it. It also depends on if you're serving a little bit of a vinaigrette on the side. You could even loosen up that mayonnaise with a little more vinegar and create a vinaigrette from that as well, which would really be nice. So it just depends. Lobster is great with nothing on it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fat is usually just a bit of a vehicle for the flavor, as well as to add some moisture because you have the bread. So being that it's delicious in and of itself, you just kind of go from there, I think. But yeah, as a kid, we just had it all the time. And then we would go fishing for halibut, or not halibut, flounder, the little mini halibut. And I just thought that was going to happen all the time. Now to go fishing, it's like, costs a lot of money, but we do live right by the Pacifica Pier. So I got to get Drew, come on down. We'll throw some fishing poles in the water.
I don't think it's as hot in Placer County, is it, Drew?
Right?
This is hot. Wow. Man, we're broiling it. I could put the lobster on the driveway and we would have finished the whole thing.
I'm spoiled in Pacifica. It's very cool here.
109 in Placer today. Okay. Well, we're off of the 111 from yesterday, and now we're at 104, and right now it's a balmy 95, honestly. Rachelle, Tom asks, how do you keep from eating the lobster before it gets into the salad?
How do you keep from eating it? Because I'm on Zoom.
Is it usually like lobster to eat on the side and one to get into the lobster roll? Okay.
And I wanted to just touch on just two quick things about, again, so much respect for the fact that people are doing a lot more cooking these days. And I get it. I'm not one of those chefs that's like, oh, it's so easy. Like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of planning. And, some people are fortunate enough to fall in love with cooking early on, and we're really lucky. But I have a lot of respect for all the work that people are doing out there. I think a couple really quick tips, because I know we just have a second, but just briefly, if you bring all your produce home, I bring all my produce home and I wash it right then and there, except for berries and mushrooms that don't like to be washed. I wash everything right then and there so that I don't have to keep washing every single carrot when I need it. So kind of things like that, working on a tray, working near the sink. I see people that bake and they put everything all over the place, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's so much to clean. So, just thinking about, as a chef, I constantly have to think about how efficient I'm being. So, things like that, where if you can work on a tray, work by the sink, kind of wash everything all at once, hopefully things like that will help streamline what can be a lot of work.
Excellent. Well, we are at the end, and Rachelle, it was so great of you to bring us the lobster rolls for Labor Day, and I'm happy to announce that we will do with you the current kitchen with the double entendre meant for the electric current and the current day in September.
I love it. Kitchens are changing. They're becoming electrified. There's a lot of ways that we can cook better, live cleaner, and have a current kitchen.
Yeah. So we'll let all of you know when we're going to have that class with her about cooking with electric. And we have a wonderful lineup in September. Shonda, one of our guests tonight, is our speaker on September 28th. So stay tuned. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.